day, a guy comes in for an interview. Comes in, he has on a briefcase, he's got his trench coat on. Comes into my office. I say, "Hey, would you like me to take your coat?" He said no. So he sat down. The whole interview, he never took his coat off. I couldn't get past it. I just kept wondering, why won't he take his coat off?
So I totally get when sometimes you have to be flexible and people have to interview over their lunch hour. Reasonable. But when you come to the interview, please don't pull out your actual lunch bag and start eating during the interview.
We had one gentleman come in one time for an interview, and he was very well dressed, looked very sharp, everything looked new, except that he still had the tape down the side of his pants that said extra large or whatever it was, so he had obviously just bought them, so you might want to remove all new labels before you come in for an interview.
We go through a criteria sheet when we're talking to candidates about their interest, their criteria, things that they are interested in. And there's a section where I talk about strengths and weaknesses. And I looked at him and I said, "So can you tell me something about your strengths? You can identify any strengths?" And he looked at me very seriously and he said, "Well, I'm really good at Xbox."
He's into the third interview, last and final. He's about to get the offer. Last question. Seems easy enough. What are some of your hobbies? He says, "Well, my son and I, we like to steal movies off the internet."
I was interviewing a candidate once, and he was sharing with me that he was bored in his current role because he was running out of things to do. And so I asked him, I said, "Well, what do you do when you run out of things to do?" Just knowing he's gonna share with me, show me his initiative, that he goes around and asks his teammates or his boss what he can do to help. But what does he say? He says, "No," he says, "I go and hide so no one can know that I've run out of things to do." Is it wrong that I laughed out loud right there in the interview? Because I did.
So I was in an interview this one time, and this guy was talking about his background and went into great detail about his life history. So I heard everything about his first marriage, his kids, and then all of a sudden he turned around and invited me to dinner.
I always ask an open-ended question. Let him take it from there. What did he do? Went on and on and on.
Why would you take off your wig during an interview? Why?
Tell me a little bit about yourself. Well, he went on to tell me everything about himself. It got 15 minutes in, 20 minutes in, finally I pulled out my stopwatch, I set it on the table, and I let it go. And it went on for another half an hour.
He literally walks in holey jeans. I mean, holey is in like, you could see his inner thigh.
And finally, after my alarm went off, I looked at him and I said, "Are you done?"
He's wearing a wrinkled shirt and he's 15 minutes late to the interview.
Just as a word to the wise, if your resume says your strongest asset is attention to detail, you might want to spell check the word detail.
Casually, he reaches in his pocket and pulls out a vape pen and blows a big puff of smoke out and continues just like nothing had happened. And I think I sat there and just sort of stared at him for a minute and realized, wow, that's never happened before.
Okay, so my candidate showed up, rolled out of bed, looked crazy, hair on the top of her head, absolute mess. So we get into the interview process. That was entertaining to say the least. Went to her references, then went through them, all family members, always a good sign. The one employer that she did have, his name was Shorty.
I'm doing a Skype interview and we log on, the other lady logs on, and she's sitting outside in her backyard at a picnic table. And so we're like, "Hey, did you know this was an interview?" She's like, "Yeah, I did. I knew it was an interview." And so we ask her, "Well, what are you doing?" And she says, "Well, I just got done feeding the chickens and cleaning the coop out back."